Good morning and welcome to the Literacy Breakfast with Nancy Pearl. I am Catherine Fryman, the Executive Director of the Whatcom Literacy Council, and donations from today's event will support our free adult literacy programs here in Whatcom County. So thank you for coming to this really fun fundraiser. So I have to pay attention and read, because if I don't read, then I won't go say everything. We like to start our literacy breakfast off in a special way, and this year is no exception. This morning we welcome Kwasmut, did I say it right? Sadie Olson, who will begin our program with a song. Kwasmut is a member and a resident of Lummi and a co-founder of White Swan Environmental, a native-led nonprofit whose vision, mission, and work support the restoration of longhouses in her family's ancestral homelands. She's a student at the Northwest Indian College in the Bachelor of Science Native Environmental Science program, and she's interested in exploring the connection between health and decolonizing, relationship building, and place-based learning in her ancestral homelands. In 2021, she received the 30 Under 30 Changemakers Award for Social Justice, and in September of this year, she received the first Dottie Dale Youth Peacemakers Award from the Whatcom Peace and Justice Center. It's nice that our community is recognizing Sadie's good work, and because there is no social justice without literacy, we thought it was appropriate to have her start her program. Sadie?
Ait sgwael kwasomat sy'n ysnat, cha uchlymisen, sa hanap hasmint anaman, I kutamat sy'n tan, so itin ohilok quenis atla atiak ias, nuch chisen makwalia quenis inatachel, nistli quenis qual aquaquino squal, outsen chitsa uchlymi chasen, I utatasin quenis tunaukl. Haishka atias geno aitstrai, haishka it's a snap, it's a pook. Haishka it's a ait scholowin. Haishka huian la uchlimi chasen, I stli nu uchlimi tangoch. Sila, chamok, akwiok, solalokla, sa solalokla, I siam, siathlam, haishka. Good day, my friends and relatives. My traditional name is Kwasomat. My English name is Sadie Olson. My father is Sahanap Hasmin, and his English name is Troy Olson. My mother is Kusamat, and her English name is Shirley Williams. I'm happy to see all of you here today. I just wanted to say a few words. I do not know the Lummi language, and I am still learning how to speak it. Haishka for giving your advice to young readers or to adult readers. Haishka for all of your good energy in your mind, in your heart, in your spirit, as one mind, one heart, one people. Haishka for your love for the territory of the Lummi people and for listening to me speak the Lummi language. I'm excited that White Swan Environmental will be working on some 13 Moon curriculum development, and that's one of our project areas out of our nonprofit organization. And I think literacy is a really important opportunity for everybody to have and to be able to comprehend in the world. I would also like to end off with a song. So this song is called The Morning Star Song, and it was passed down to me from my Uncle Jack Kagi, who passed away. He helped to lead our family songs. We're the Swan song, or the Swan people, the Swan clan, and that's why I have the swan pin on my chest, and my regalia was all woven by my father, Sahanat Pasmin, and this is traditional to the San Juan Islands. Chana, salation, chana. Chana, salation, chana. Quachilta, kwasin, salation, chana. Chinata kwasin, salation, chana. Chana, salation, chana. Chana, salation, chana. Quachilta kwasin, salation, chana. Quachilta kwasin, salation, chana. Chana, salation, chana. Chana, salation, chana. Quachilta kwasin, salation, chana. Quachilta kwasin, salation, chana. Chana, salation, chana. Chana, salation, chana. Quachilta kwasin, salation, chana. Quachilta kwasin, salation, chana. Hi, Ishka. That song is the Morning Star song. It talks about the first star that comes up in the evening and the last star that goes away in the morning time. Hi, Ishka.
Wow, that was beautiful. It touched my heart. Thank you so much, Haishka. Really appreciate you being here and starting us off right. So it's the first time we've had an in-person event in a couple years after the COVID lockdown. Appreciate everybody for showing up this morning. I'm seeing friends that I haven't seen in a couple years now. A big thank you to our Pulitzer sponsors, BP Cherry Point Refinery and Phillips 66 Ferndale Refinery, for their ongoing support of our adult literacy programs. And to the many smaller businesses that came in with Newberry sponsorships, thank you for your support. It's nice to see so many of our partner agencies here this morning. Our many friends from Whatcom Community College are here. Goodwill, Norma Suarez and the team from Goodwill is here. Director Rebecca Judd and the librarians from the Bellingham Public Library, and Director Christine Perkins and the librarians from the Whatcom County Library System. We truly appreciate everyone being here this morning in support of our literacy programs. These partners help us address the gaps in literacy for adults in our community. I'd also like to thank the folks from Village Books who are here bright and early. It's great to have them be partners on this event, and of course for Nancy Pearl for being here this morning. Quick update on what we've been up to here at the Whatcom Literacy Council. As you know, during COVID, we had to pack up our laptops and go home and figure out how to provide services without seeing people in person. My amazing staff contacted each and every volunteer and learner and customized learning plans based on the resources they had available, such as using FaceTime on a cell phone if a learner did not have a laptop. Gloria Garcia developed several levels of online classes, and while we did lose some learners because of the tech issues, we gained others who could now take advantage of these online services when before they had transportation or childcare constraints. These online programs have been very well received, so we'll be keeping them going, even as we move back to our traditional in-person tutoring and small group classes, hoping that this hybrid approach will make our services more accessible than ever to our target populations. Now that we're back on track and going strong, we're continuing to place volunteers in classrooms at BTC and Whatcom Community College. We're helping refugees who've recently moved to our area and establishing new partnerships with businesses, school districts, and churches. Each year, we include in our program an award to a business or person who has helped out the Whatcom Literacy Council in a significant way. This year's Friend of Literacy goes to Mayberry Farm. Mayberry Farm, yes. Mayberry Farm is a berry farm in Linden that employs many people who do not speak English as their first language. For many years, they've partnered with us to offer a basic English class to their employees, providing the classroom space, and having their staff help with the logistics of getting people signed up. On average, we'll have 45 farm workers and attend an hour-long class twice a week before they go to work. This is an investment that Mayberry Farm makes in their employees, not knowing that not only will they be able to communicate in English better at work, but they'll also take these skills home to navigate community services, communicate with their children's teachers, and be better able to take care of their families overall. So thank you, Kurt Mayberry Farm, Tom Van Berkom, and the rest of the crew for being such great partners in literacy. So, thank you. Do you want to say anything? No. All right. He's so shy. Thank you. So we know from feedback of past literacy breakfasts that you enjoy hearing from people that we work with. So this morning, we've invited a former tutor and learner to talk about their experiences working with us and with each other. John Whitmer started tutoring Andres Parra back in, I think it was 2010, that's what I have on record, when Andres knew very little English at the time. John, would you like to start us off?
Thank you. Well, good morning. And the first thanks to the Whatcom Literacy Council for this annual breakfast. I really enjoy it. And special thanks to the Literacy Council for the fine work it does in our community. Shortly after retiring a few years ago, I volunteered with the Literacy Council, who introduced me to Andreas Parra. Andreas was originally from Colombia, and you will hear from him shortly. My Literacy Council work with Andreas lasted 4 or more years, I can't recall exactly, and our friendship has continued beyond. For me, it was rewarding largely because of who Andreas was and what he brought to our sessions. I found him to be one of the most conscientious and quick-to-learn students I've ever had, and being a former teacher, I've had many. Andreas was not a recent arrival in this country when I met him. But his social environment had been mainly Spanish-speaking, and he realized that to better utilize his considerable skills, he had to improve his English. ESL classes are good, and I think Andreas may have taken a few, but they're no match for regular one-on-one sessions over an extended period of time. Andreas and I would meet usually twice a week for about 2 hours in a local coffee shop. I always look forward to those sessions. He practices English. I learned about Colombia, among other things, and even learned a little bit of Spanish. When he was taking courses at Bellingham Technical College, we would often focus on his coursework, and I learned quite a bit from his courses. And we would sometimes chat with some of the other folks in the coffee house, and Andreas would chat with them, and they would chat with us, in English, of course. And that was always very good. I always looked back on those times as a very pleasant part of the week. The Whatcom Literacy Council makes such connections possible. These connections are among the best examples of win-win situations you will find. I know some of you here this morning are or have been Literacy Council volunteers, but for those who have not, I would suggest that you consider it. It's really a lot of fun, and you'll learn a lot from it. I certainly found that to be true. Well, thank you, and I think now you're going to hear from Andreas.
Thank you, John. As he mentioned, we are always recruiting volunteers. So if you're interested in tutoring or helping us out in a classroom, please check out our website and then contact one of our staff to set up an interview. Thank you. We always need volunteers. So next we will hear from Andres.
Thanks, Kathy. Good morning. My name is Andres Parra. I am an immigrant from Bogota, Colombia. Today is a very important day for me because I have the opportunity to publicly thank John Whitmer, the Whatcom Literacy Council, and the group of sponsors who had played an invaluable role in achieving my bachelor degree in operation management, making one of my dreams come true. More than 20 years ago, my wife and I left Colombia in search of tranquility, stability, and opportunities. After much coming and going, we were fortunate to find everything we wanted here in Bellingham. But the biggest blessing was finding the Whatcom Literacy Council, who brought us together with John Whitmer. John accompanied me for more than 4 years, twice a week, for 2 hours each day. It is because of his help that today I can proudly endorse my diploma as a technician in instrumentation and control and the bachelor degree in operation management. Thank you very much, John. It's important to highlight the role of the institutions such as the Whatcom Literacy Council that are in charge to uniting people of integrating and with a good heart who wants to give their best for the community and build a better world for all. Tutor and sponsor are the fuel so that the objectives of the Whatcom Literacy Council can be realized. Many thanks to all of you for your work and for seeking to make a better world. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Andres. I'd like to congratulate Andres on achieving his goal of obtaining a bachelor's degree in operations management from BTC, and also for becoming the newest member of our board of directors. We feel his experience with us will really add to our conversations about how we meet the needs of our learners. Andres joins an amazing board of dedicated professionals who work hard to provide the governance and fiduciary oversight that makes us a strong nonprofit organization. Many of these people are here this morning. Board members, can you please identify yourselves so we can thank you? Woo. Full court press here. Thank you. Literacy is a platform for equity, and as such, the Whatcom Literacy Council strives to be a model nonprofit regarding racial equity and social justice. Limited literacy skills are a major contributor to poverty, and illiteracy is a barrier for those marginalized by race and economic status. Helping people learn English proactively targets known ethnic disparities in our community, where people who are not proficient in English are at an automatic disadvantage. To solve systemic socioeconomic problems like workforce development and poverty relief, it is critical that we build a more literate population. One of the best ways to break the cycle of poverty is to invest in literacy and adult education, giving people the skills that support economic mobility and self-sufficiency. Investments in programs like those at the Whatcom Literacy Council enhance academic skills and set people on a course for good jobs with better wages. So, now is the time we ask for your help. Please consider making a donation to the Whatcom Literacy Council. We hope you can be generous, because we rely on gifts from people like you to keep our programs running. on the table in front of you is a small envelope where you can place a check or write down your credit card information. Don't worry, we keep black it out and we shred that. We do not save that information or share it with anyone else. And if you're at home, please mail your check made out to the Whatcom Literacy Council and snail mail it to Box 1292, Bellingham 98227. We also have Venmo at Whatcom Literacy. And at any time, you can go to our website and go on the donation page and make a gift. We really love those monthly donations. So become a sustainable member of the Whatcom Literacy Council. We hope that you can be generous this morning. Your support will not only help an adult, it will have a positive impact on their family, their employer, and the community at large. So thank you for taking your time. You see those cool books with the holes in the middle? You put their check in there. Very nicely done. Thank you so much. So now is the time you've all been waiting for. Nancy Pearl is here. We love Nancy Pearl. She's a librarian, best-selling author, literary critic, former executive director of the Washington Center for the Book at the Seattle Public Library. Her prolific reading and her knowledge of books and literature have made her famous. In addition to 4 books in the Book Lust series, she's author of the novel George and Lizzie and The Writer's Library, a collection of interviews with authors about the books they love, co-written with Jeff Schwager. She regularly appears on public radio recommending books and interviewing authors. Note that you can catch these on BTV, the City of Bellingham's free TV channel that is streaming us now. She is the author of a novel and a memoir. That was not a memoir. She's been given so many awards that I do not have time to read the entire list. Let's suffice it to say she was named 2011 Librarian of the Year by Library Journal and given the 2021 Literarian Award for Outstanding Service to the American Literary Community, a Lifetime Achievement Award. So we truly appreciate Nancy's ongoing support of the Whatcom Literacy Council. She joins us today to share some of her favorite titles because she knows that you celebrate literacy and understand the joy that reading can bring. We also thank Village Books for being here this morning, our partners in crime. Thank you for being here and selling your books. These are the books that Nancy will be talking about. We ask that you wait until Nancy is done with her presentation before you go over to buy books. Note that if you cannot purchase the books this morning, they give us a 10% kickback from the books purchased here this morning. If you have to leave and can't buy the books here this morning, leave off your sheet with your name on it. Is that correct, Paul? And they will honor that, but that's the way that we get the support from them for the purchases made here this morning. So, Nancy, welcome, and take it away. Do we have the copy of the book list? Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, it's great to be back in person. There are 2 organizations that I never want to give up supporting as long as I get asked back, and one of them, of course, is Whatcom Literacy, and the other is supporting the Langley Public Library, where I've gone for 25 years to talk about good books. So, because we're back in person and I was so excited to be here, this is a long list, and but I really think there's stuff on here that, that can, the holiday season's coming up, make it a book year, and here are some great, great books that are on the list. My list that I have is not in the same order that you have, so I'm going to do it by your order. The first book, okay, so every book that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to say, oh my God, this is such a good book. And I know that some of you who don't know me, many of you who might not know me, might think, oh God, that person has no critical reading skills. But in fact, every book that's on the list is really the result of probably trying to read 10 other books and putting them down because they weren't the kind of books that I I just didn't enjoy them. So the first book on the list, fabulous book. It's called The Christie Affair. It's a novel by Nina de Gramont. Now, Agatha Christie is, I believe, the best-selling author ever. Her books, which she started writing and publishing in the 1920s and ended, I believe, in the 1960s was her last book, have never, ever been out of print. But there's a big mystery in Agatha Christie's life, and that is, in 1926, she disappeared for 11 days. And no one knew where she was. And no one has ever known where she was because she never spoke about it. Scotland Yard looked for her, her husband, everybody was on the alert to find Agatha Christie. To this day, nobody knows what happened. There have been several nonfiction books and at least 2, including this one, novels about what might have happened to Agatha Christie during those 11 days. This one, I think, is absolutely wonderful. The background for her disappearance is that her husband, whom she adored, in the way of upper-class Brits in the 1920s and 30s, took a younger mistress and wanted a divorce. When he announced that to Agatha, the next day, she drove off in her car, leaving her beloved dog and her beloved daughter behind. And then those 11 days followed until she was found where she had signed into a hotel under her husband's mistress name. The reason that I love this book so much, not only is the writing is wonderful, but if you love classic mysteries, this is a classic Agatha Christie mystery. I interviewed Nina for the TV show that I do that you can see on the Bellingham Public Television. And I learned that she had never read an Agatha Christie book until she learned about this disappearance and decided to write about it. And somehow she just captured the spirit of Agatha Christie's mysteries. So that's one reason why I love it. The other reason why, oh God, I said I would talk quickly, and here I'm going on. The other reason why I loved it so much is that it's told from the point of view of the mistress. And it's so, so, so clever. And the cover's fabulous. And we always say you can't judge a book by its cover, but we all know that's how we decide what to read. So that's The Christie Affair. Terrific book. Esmond and Ilya, an unreliable memoir. Marina Warner is a historian. She's someone who writes about myths. She's a British intellectual. And this is the story of her parents' marriage. It's really interesting. I mean, think about if you were to sit down and write a memoir of how you as a child observed your parents' marriage and how you would approach it and what you would understand and what you couldn't understand because you weren't in that marriage in that kind of way that the two people most involved were. So this is beautifully written. It's a fascinating story. Her father, they met during World War II. Her father, who was about 20 years older than her mother, met in Bari, Italy, where her father was stationed as part of the British Army, and her mother was just 20, a young woman, in poverty, sort of rescued from this life by the man she thought would change everything for the better. And you have to read the book to find out what happens. It's I love this memoir. The next book is John Marshall Harlan, the great dissenter, John Marshall Harlan, America's judicial hero. Wouldn't it be nice to have some judicial heroes around? John Marshall Harlan lived from 1833 to 1911. He was a Supreme Court justice during the Gilded Age, during the end of the 19th century, early 20th century. And he is best known for being the sole dissenter of the 3 big civil rights cases that came before the court during that time. He was the sole dissenter, and through the you know, the wonders of technology, you can go online and read his dissents, and you can see why he chose to dissent in all of these cases, including the most important, Plessy v. Ferguson, which was the separate but equal clause. I read that when I was reading this wonderful biography, and it just was so moving to see this man, this Supreme Court justice who grew into his role, who was born in Kentucky, had imbibed all the southernness, the racism in Kentucky, of his childhood, of the society in which he grew up, and changed and developed and became someone better than he was when he was appointed to the court. So let me just say, this is not an academic biography. There are not a lot of footnotes. This is for what we used to call, when I was working at the library, this is a book for the interested adult reader. And it's a fabulous, fabulous biography. The next book is Elizabeth McCracken's The Hero of This Book. Now, I'm a huge fan of Elizabeth McCracken's books. I've been a fan of her books for 30 years. Her first book was a collection of short stories called Here's Your Hat, What's Your Hurry? And reading that book, you get everything there is to know about Elizabeth McCracken. That is her fabulous sense of humor and her total empathy and love for her characters. When I think about my novel George and Lizzie, and I think about the people who have influenced me, whose fiction writing influenced me, Elizabeth McCracken is one of those writers. So this is a book that when you read this book, you're going to say, is this a memoir or is this a novel? And it's shelved and cataloged by Library of Congress as a novel. But the main character in this book is Elizabeth McCracken. She is walking around London remembering her mother, who was a very important person in her life. And incidentally, the one fact that I know about her mother is that she was the self-proclaimed inventor of the mojito. So that gives you a sense. I mean, if that's what you're going to put on, like your ID, like a badge, I invented the mojito. What have you done lately? She recently died, Elizabeth, when she was thinking about this book, and I just recently interviewed her as well. She thought she was walking around London thinking about her mother, remembering her mother, and that's what this book is about. A woman walking around London, going to the theater, doing all the things that she and her mother did together. Elizabeth McCracken wrote one memoir before this, really a tragic memoir about the stillborn child. Her first child was stillborn, and she never wanted to write another one, but she wanted to write about her mother, and this is the book that we have, and it's just a delight. I mean, I adore Elizabeth McCracken, and I adore every book that she's ever written. And she's a librarian, let's not forget that. So that's the hero of this book. Kingdoms, Natasha Pulley. I hope there's some science fiction fantasy readers in the audience. I hope. One of the things that I did in the last couple of months is that I read all of Natasha Pulley's, I think she has 5 novels. Her first book was called The Watchmaker of Filigree Street, and which I had not read when it came out, but I read Kingdoms, which is this book, first, and then I went back and read all of her books, and she's just great. A young British writer, and this book, Kingdoms, has everything. It's like she put the kitchen sink of fantasy science fiction writing in this book. So there's not only time travel, there's alternate history, there's real life events, reenacting the Battle of Trafalgar, which Britain lost. The book is set in the 19th century at a time this alternate history where France won the Battle of Trafalgar and now rules England. Scotland is a rebel country trying to get rid of the French. And one day, this man arrives at a metro stop in London. He has a postcard, and he has no idea who he is or what he's doing there, or indeed where he is. That's the book. You have to read it. It's great. The next book on the list is Lessons in Chemistry. I know tons of you have read this book. I thought, should I put it on the list or not? Because I always like to put books that you might not have read on the list. And Bonnie Garmis's book has just gotten wonderful, well-justified reviews. If you haven't read Bonnie Garmis's Lessons in Chemistry, if what you want is a really entertaining, smart book that you won't, it's the perfect book for this weather, okay? Absolutely. One of these books on the list, I'm going to say don't read till the spring. But this book, you can read anytime. Main character is Elizabeth Zott. She's a single mom in the 1960s. She gets a job, think Julia Child, doing food cooking show on television, and because her background is as a chemist, and she's a brilliant chemist, she turns cooking into lessons in chemistry. In my first book, Booklust, there's a category called Great Dogs in Fiction, and the dog in Lessons in Chemistry is named 630. And that book would have been on that list had this book been around way back in 2003. So Lessons in Chemistry, so much fun. It was the Barnes & Noble's book of the year, actually, which was pretty exciting. The next book is a picture book called Library Girl. It's perfect for ages 5 through 9. It's a story of a little girl growing up in a big city who discovers the library, her public library. That little girl is me, and it's the story of my love affair with libraries and my bicycle that I named Charger, that I used to ride to the library every day, or as often as I could. Written by Karen Henry Clark and wonderfully illustrated by a Portland artist, Cheryl Murray. Light Perpetual by Frances Spufford. So it seems to me, I think about this a lot. I think about how kind of sad it is that when you look at children growing up, what you see is that every decision that you make or they make narrows their choices. Did you ever think about that? That you choose to take ballet lessons rather than modern dance, or you choose to take, French in high school instead of Spanish, and all of those things narrow your choices. Frances Spufford's a British writer, and in this book, Light Perpetual, what he has done, he began with a real event, a V-2 rocket hitting a Woolworths store during the Blitz. And from that beginning, he imagines that there were 5 young teenagers at that Woolworths store whose lives were snuffed out by that attack. And he imagines what their lives might have been like had they not died. It's beautiful, a beautiful book. You get to know those kids. Yeah, it's heartbreaking, but it's such a wonderful, wonderful novel. And he's a man, the writer, Frances Spufford, that I think you would want to read his other books as well. So that's Light Perpetual. Nella's Last War. So before World War II, I believe a group of sociologists organized in Britain something called mass observation, where people could sign up to keep diaries of their experiences during the war years, and those were then all sent to mass observation, and they are all now at the University of Sussex. So you can go there and read, real-time diaries of what people were feeling and experiencing in England during World War II. That's why it says the Second World War Diaries of Housewife 49. She was number 49. Luckily, we're getting, little by little, some of these diaries, some of these journals are being published and made available to us to read, and they're fascinating reading. Now, I am an Anglophile, so I could be a little prejudiced, but I think how great it would have been if, say, in 2015, we had a mass observation kind of thing in the United States where people could send in their journals over the next, through the pandemic. How much that would add to our understanding of the past. So that's Nella Last's War. There's a sequel to this that is available. Her life immediately after the war. It's great. I love this. I mean, this book is an indulgence to put on the list, but I couldn't resist it because I thought it was so great. 100 Years of Lenny and Margot, a terrific book for book groups if you're looking for a good book group book. Lenny is 17 years old. She's terminally ill. She's at like the hospital where she is going to die not too long from when we meet her. And she meets Margot, who's 83, who is also at that hospital. Their ages add up to 100, and what they decide to do is paint 100 pictures of their lives. Why do I think this is a good book club book? A couple reasons. One is a decision that Lenny's father makes early in the book, I think would be really interesting to discuss. And the second reason is that a decision that Margot's husband makes in the book would be fascinating to discuss. I loved this book as well. The next book is a book of cartoons. I think this is the first time I've ever talked about a book of cartoons, but Tom Gauld, I'm going to say Gauld, G-A-U-L-D, Tom Gauld's Book of Cartoons, Revenge of the Librarians. So this is a book of cartoons, not only about librarians, but also mainly about books and readers. And when I was reading the book, I was thinking that it would be great to, those abbreviations like TLDR, too long, didn't read. Wouldn't that be great to arrange your books on your bookshelf that way? Like, you might have Anna Karenina and Moby Dick, TL, didn't read. And, some of the too short did read. So that's the kind of humor that Tom Gauld has. It's wonderful. Robert E. Lee and Me, A Southerner's Reckoning with the Myth of the Lost Cause. Ty Sedgwill is now a professor emeritus of history at West Point. This is a memoir. Now, one of the things that draws me to the books I love is wonderful, wonderful writing. I mean, I love it when I can read a book and underline, and sort of sit back and think, oh my gosh, how could that author have picked those perfect words to put in that place? This is not one of those books. Every other book on the list is, but this is not one of them. You do not read this book for the writing. You read this book for what he's telling us. And Ty Sedgwill grew up in Alexandria, Virginia. He grew up believing that the Civil War was just, that the South should have won the Civil War, that Robert E. Lee was the greatest man ever born. And when, over the years, from his childhood to now, he has come to believe that the myths and the legends that have grown up around what the Southerners called the lost cause are really false. And he, you have to read about his decision about West Point and what he teaches in his history classes, etc. It's a pretty amazing journey that this man makes. And I just realized the two nonfiction books that I've talked about, Robert E. Lee and The Great Dissenter, both talk about how we can develop as human beings, develop in our understanding of the world and social justice and all of those things, how we can develop until we become better people and better adults. Okay, Still Life by Sarah Winman. Oh my gosh, you have to read this novel. This is another novel this is perfect for people who love character-driven, beautifully written novels. This is set during World War II. When the book opens, we meet a young British soldier, lower class British soldier named Ulysses, who is in Italy, and while he is on patrol or doing something, he meets a woman who turns out to be an art historian who has come to Italy to help rescue the pictures that have been damaged by the invading armies or hidden by the Italians themselves. That meeting changes Ulysses' life. And it made me think about how you never know whether that casual meeting, that casual conversation that you have with somebody can really turn your life around and make it something that it wasn't intended to be. Plus, in this book, there is a fabulous parrot who plays his own role in the book. Sarah Winman, I mean, a lot of people said, many people have said to me this is their favorite book of the year. It's a wonderful audio book, so those of you who, like me, listen to books, you might want to check this out. The next book by Julie Otsuka, Swimmers. Oh my God, what a book. But I would say do not read this until, the sun is up and it's brighter and all of that. This is the book. The book is really two novellas, and I interviewed Julie, so you can watch that interview. It's two novellas. The first one is about a group of swimmers dedicated recreational swimmers who come to a public club and every day, and they only know each other by who's in lane 2. It's called lane 2 said this. Oh, lane 4 always did this. One of the people we get to know is an older woman who is falling into dementia. Limited cognitive abilities. We get to meet her, and we see her at the beginning when she's just barely kind of losing touch. The swimming pool develops a crack. They have to stop swimming. They can't use the pool anymore until it's fixed. The next novella focuses on that elderly woman and her relationship with her daughter, and her daughter's decision, along with the woman's husband's decision, that they cannot take care of the mother and she needs to go to a memory care unit. This book is so beautifully written. I mean, it is just amazing. Julie Otsuka is maybe best known for her second book, The Buddha in the Attic, which really you have to go read. I mean, I insist. It's the story. It's written in the first person plural. We did this. It starts with the story of the picture brides coming to the United States to marry men who they have never met, who are very different from in many cases, different from the letters that they wrote and the pictures that the men sent. And coming to California, living their lives in California until the internment, and they're forced to leave their homes. So the whole book is told as we, the group of Japanese women, and then the last chapter, after they're all gone from the towns, is written by the townspeople. in their view, we did this. The Buddha in the Attic, you have to read that. Swimmers is a marvelous, marvelous novel. Okay, thank you, Mr. Nixon. Gish Jen. Gish Jen is a Chinese-American writer who grew up in a suburb of New York City. She's one of those writers who is very funny and yet very understanding and intuitive about the characters that she writes about. This is a collection of interlinked short stories. It begins with the title story, Thank You, Mr. Nixon. And the main character in that first story is, the first story is an epistolary chapter. It's the letter. It's a letter that this Chinese woman is writing to Mr. Nixon, Richard Nixon. And the woman who is writing the letter is in heaven. And she's writing to thank Richard Nixon, who is in hell, in pit 9, I believe. And she's writing to thank him. What is she thanking him for? She's thanking him for the fact that when he came to China in 1972 to open China to the West, and he was accompanied by his wife, Pat, and they went, and there are pictures of them. Pat Nixon is wearing a beautiful red coat. Now, as soon as I read that, of course, I went on Google and looked at and you could see the red coat. Now, this woman's family, as a result of seeing that red coat, they decided to become coat makers, and that has given them their life's work, and they've done very well as coat makers. So she's, doing her due diligence and thanking the person who gave her the idea for that. The stories, that first story is 1972. The second story is contemporary. I mean, it is just like tomorrow or yesterday. And you get throughout all these stories that lovely combination of Gish Jen's, of humor and of great characters and great writing. I interviewed Gish Jen, too. You could watch her. Oh, and I interviewed Julie Atsuka. I don't remember if I said that. Okay, very fast. There But For Thee by Ali Smith. Ali Smith's a British writer, terrific, terrific writer, and this is my favorite book of hers. There But For Thee, you know how it follows, Grace of God, Go I. This is a story of a young man. It's told from 4 different points of view. In the first, a young man is invited to a dinner party. He knows the man who invited him to come, but he never met the host and hostess. They're at the dinner party. I'm thinking, after soup but before salad. He gets up and he excuses himself. He goes upstairs everybody thinks to the bath, if they think at all, that it's to the bathroom, and he locks himself in one of the bedrooms upstairs and he refuses to come out. And this is what happens as a result of that. And little by little, from 4 different points of view, we come to understand that man. I listened to this book as well. One of the characters in this book is like this brilliant 9-year-old girl who is just a delight to hear about, to read about, and read from, every time she comes into one of the stories, one of the chapters, I really loved that. This Time Tomorrow by Emma Straub. So this has a little bit of time travel, but don't hold it against it. This Time Tomorrow is the story of a young woman in her 30s, great love for her father, who has lived a very unhealthy life, a lot of smoking, a lot of just, not healthy behavior. And this woman is turning 40, and her father is in the hospital, and it's pretty clear he's going to die. And she doesn't want him to die. She adores her father, and she wishes there was some way that she could go back and change the past so that her father, on the eve of her 40th birthday, would not be in that condition. And indeed, she does find a way to go back to her 16th birthday, and gives her a chance, as she sees it, to change our present, her present, by altering the past. It's a wonderful story of Emma Straub is a young writer, Brooklyn. She and her husband own a bookstore. Her father was Peter Straub, the horror writer that I have to admit I never read any of his books because I thought they would be too scary. But I love Emma Straub's books and highly recommend her for a good contemporary writer. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, Gabriel Zevin. Oh my gosh, has anybody read this book yet? Did you like it? Yeah. Did you say loved it? You loved it. Me too. Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, Gabriel Zevin. Gabriel Zevin writes young adult books and books for adults. This is for older teens and adults, I would think. It's the story of a boy and a girl who meet in middle school. They're both really the brightest in their middle school classes, both very good at science, technology, and they see each other at competitions, and they kind of lose touch, and then meet again when they're in college. One is at Harvard, the other is at MIT. They meet in Cambridge. And they decide, for various reasons, that they're going to develop a computer game, one of those multiplayer computer games. And this is the story of the next 30 years in their friendship. And it's a book about, you don't even have to play computer games. You don't even have to own a computer. This is not about that at all. This is about friendship and love and creativity. It's one of the most immersive books that I've read in a long time. You're just in that world with them, and you don't want to leave it. It's a long book. As I listened to this book as well, so I didn't, I saw it was like, 15 hours. That's a pretty long book. But the page, it just goes by because you want to know more about these two people. A great book. The next book is a collection of poetry. It won the National Book Award. It's a book called The Tradition by Jericho Brown. The book is published by our own State of Washington Poetry Publishing Company, Copper Canyon. I just wanted to quickly read one of the poems because otherwise I just want you to see how wonderful he is, Jericho Brown. It's called Hero. She never knew one of us from another, so my brothers and I grew up fighting over our mother's mind, like sun-colored suitors in a Greek myth. We were willing to do evil. We kept chocolate around our mouths. The last of her mother's lot, she cried at funerals, cried when she whipped me. She whipped me daily. I am most interested in people who declare gratitude for their childhood beatings. None of them took what my mother gave, waking us for school with sharp slaps to our bare thighs. That side of the family is darker. I should be grateful, so I will be. No one on earth knows how many abortions happened before a woman risked her freedom by giving that risk a name, by taking it to breast. I don't know why I am alive now, that I still cannot impress the woman who whipped me into being. I turned my mother into a grandmother. She thanks me by kissing my sons. Gratitude is black. Black as a hero returning from war to a country that banked on his death. Thank God, it can't get much darker than that. So that's Jericho Brown, The Tradition. One of our major poets, and he's so young. Okay, when I first got the pre-pub book called What Just Happened, Notes on a Long Year by Charles Finch, and I looked at it, I thought, I lived through 2020 to now. I don't need to read somebody else's diary about it. And then I remembered that Charles Finch is best known for his collection of Victorian mysteries. So if you like historical mysteries, take a look at his books. And then, and he's a wonderful book reviewer, writes for the Los Angeles Times, mostly. Sometimes the New York Times, you can find him. So What Just Happened he was asked by the Los Angeles Times to keep a diary, sort of like that mass observation that I wish everybody, everyone had done. So he was asked by the Los Angeles Times to keep a diary. This book begins in March 2020 and continues for a year. Charles Finch, I interviewed him, and I've interviewed a lot of people, a lot of authors since 2004, but there aren't that many where I felt, oh my gosh, I just wanted us to keep on talking, because he is so smart and so charming. And reading this book, even though it rehashes all of our experiences, reading the way he's talking about it in such, and it's not a polemic. I mean, I probably should have started with that. It is not a polemic at all. In fact, we soon got off the topic of the book in the interview and started talking about our favorite acoustic women singers. And, I just felt like I could have gone on talking to him forever. He's just a delight. So I really enjoyed what just happened, and I highly recommend it. Okay, the Writer's Library, that's the collection. That's the collection that Catherine mentioned. That Jeff Schwager, my pal Jeff Schwager, and I did. We interviewed 21 authors not about their own writing, but about the books that they read and loved. Books that they read in childhood up to the books that they had just finished the other day. Probably many people's favorite interview in the book is with Michael Chabon and his wife Ayelet Waldman, where Jeff and I sat around their dining room table and mostly talked about children's books. And with every one of these authors, I came away liking them even more than I had knowing them just through the books. So it was great fun to do, and the interviews are, I'm a little prejudiced, but I think the interviews are fascinating. The next book is Zori by Laird Hunt. Zori is, if you're looking, it's probably clear now, I love character-driven novels that are wonderfully written. And when you're looking for a character-driven novel, the best way, a really easy way to find one, a good clue that it's a character-driven novel, is to, look over the shelves at the library or the bookstore and look for a book where the title is the character's name, okay? Or it's descriptive of a character, like About a Boy, Nick Hornby's book. You're going to miss some, but that's a good way of finding them quickly. And Zori is the story of a young woman growing up in Indiana at the early days of the 20th century, and it's her life. And it's a very simple, we might say boring life, where nothing happens and yet everything happens. Do you remember the book The Stone Diaries by Carol Shields? Also the story of a woman's life. The writing in Zori is so plain, so matter of fact, not so unadorned that it's made perfect for the book by the author's talents. Nothing else that Laird Hunt has written has ever sounded good to me. So this is the only book of his that I read, but it's just a beautiful, beautiful novel. Many of the books that I talked about are in paperback, thank goodness, and so they're all there. And the last book on the list is my novel, George and Lizzie. You can guess it's a character-driven novel that I think is pretty well written. For me, it was just a joy to write. In some ways, I wish I hadn't published it, because I would love to go on writing more about George and Lizzie, because they're just so real to me. And that's it for this year. Thank you.
Oh, awesome. Thank you so much, Nancy. We are honored to have her support the Whatcom Literacy Council year in and year out. And I love the chance that I've had to become friends, which is really cool. So thank you all for joining us this morning, coming out early despite the cold. If you haven't done so yet, we hope you'll make a gift before you go. And all the donations go directly to our program supporting adults who've asked for our help to get one-to-one tutoring or have small group classes. So thank you. And Paul and Kelly and Sarah are back there with Nancy's list of recommended books. And have a great day. Thanks so much for being here.